on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his way.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
How are you, Dylan?
I am doing wonderful. I'm so pre-Thanksgiving right now.
Wonderfully?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No, it's the way I said it. And I'm just making room now for my Thanksgiving dinner.
You are?
Yeah, I'm not going to eat from now till Thursday.
I don't believe it.
It's
I
true.
do not believe the statement.
Yeah, you gotta pregame. You know, you gotta get ready for it.
You got to clear out.
Yeah.
So you're doing some fasting?
It's much like adult stars do.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but we're not going to have Thanksgiving on Thursday.
Well, I'm going to be ready just in case.
We're having it on Saturday.
You know, we're going to have it from Thursday through Saturday.
Well, that's probably true.
How's that?
I've been in like a cooking, baking kind of mood lately. I've been cranking out the desserts.
Tonight you were at it again and just making stuff left and right. I couldn't even keep up with it.
I know I made Oreo. They're supposed to be like cookies and cream Rice Krispie treats.
Wow.
But they're just like Oreos in the Rice Krispie treats with some white chips.
Okay.
Like confectioner's chips.
I need to try that.
Right?
Yeah.
Pretty tasty, Dylan.
Yes, and you made some incredible cupcakes the other day from scratch, everything, including the icing, and they were so tasty.
What can I say? I should have a bakery.
I must say, when you get in these moods, I really appreciate it.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to preparing a delicious meal
I'm looking forward to eating your
for the
delicious meal.
anti-Thanksgiving holiday.
Wow. It's Indigenous Peoples Day? Is that
Sure.
what it's supposed to be?
Well, no, that's what they call Columbus Day now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's you should have let the colonizers die day. Isn't that what Thanksgiving is now? They shouldn't have showed them the fish trick.
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
on that note.
Okay. I'm like, who are you? That guy Lance from TikTok?
Yes, I am Lance from TikTok.
I have a bit of local true crime news, Dylan. Out
Oh.
of Jackson County, North Carolina. A former cashier's resident has been arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
Wow.
Yeah, so this guy, Grant Alexander Higgs, is age 42, and he was a chef at the Country Club of Sapphire Valley, I believe. And back in July of 2020, deputies went to a home on Racket Club Drive near Cashiers in response to a report of a gunshot wound. When they arrived, they found a 31-year-old Brittany Nicole Leftridge dead. And it has taken 2 years to finally charge Higgs in the shooting death of Leftridge.
Oh, my gosh.
He's being held right now in the Jackson County Detention Center under a $5 million bond.
So, yeah. Well, that sounds like some crazy circumstance, right? Cops get a call. Wow, there's been a gun discharged. That's all they know. And then they show up and they find someone dead.
Well, when they arrived on the scene, a deputy with the Jackson County Sheriff's Department found Brittany Leftridge lying on the ground while the property owner, which is Higgs, was performing CPR on her. The deputy took over performing the CPR on the victim and confirmed that she'd sustained a gunshot wound to her rib cage. Now, Higgs told the deputy that Brittany Leftridge had accidentally shot herself. This is according to a warrant. Higgs also said the couple had argued, and at one point he went into the bathroom, and when he emerged, Leftridge hit herself in the head with a wine bottle. The couple then went into the bedroom where Leftridge picked up a gun laying on the nightstand and fired at Higgs, according to a search warrant. She went outside and Higgs heard a gunshot. He went outside to find Leftridge standing on a walkway. He took the gun from her and emptied it by firing into the woods. He turned around to find Leftridge lying wounded in a fetal position.
Whoa. So he's claiming she struck herself in the head with a wine bottle.
Yes.
And then very shortly thereafter shot herself
Yes.
in the head,
No, in the rib cage,
in the rib cage.
according to him.
Okay, I mean, I guess that could happen, but that sounds
Very far-fetched.
very suspect to me.
Well, despite some life-saving measures performed by the first responders at the scene, she died later that day. A witness told investigators that Higgs and Leftridge had a BDSM relationship, one in which Leftridge was a submissive partner. Investigators did find numerous photos of Leftridge with injuries on her cell phone. So interviews following the shooting indicated the firearm used was thrown into the nearby woods, and bullets and bullet fragments were listed in the warrant as items to be seized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2 years later, finally getting charges against this guy.
Yeah, I'm just glad I wasn't there that night, you know? Sounds like a crazy night, right?
Okay. Well, why would you be there?
Well, I'm saying if you were hanging out, I'm glad this is not the type of people I would hang around.
That literally doesn't make any sense, but that's a very Dylan thing to say. Okay, cool.
Because it sounds like the guy killed her to me. I mean, honestly, that just sounds so far-fetched.
Yeah, it does. And I guess that's why he's been arrested and charged with her murder.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It took 2 years for them to get all their ducks in a row.
Well, see, that's the thing. These CSI shows have like ruined the public into thinking that it's super quick, these investigations.
Yeah.
And that we have all these crime scene investigators and DNA, analysis, and then it just takes like a few hours and you're going to have results of autopsies and all that. And it has to work through a system. It takes time and it can take years. I mean, it took 2 years for, the autopsy, all of the forensic investigations to be done, tested, all the conclusions drawn before they can arrest this guy.
Honestly, I agree completely with you. It gives people like a false sense of how it works.
Yeah.
These crime scene shows, because they're doing everything on the fly. Everything's happening within hours
And it's a slow process.
instead of weeks and months, possibly years. And it really, I think, sometimes it could really affect jurors when they're in the jury box. If they're big fans of these types of shows, they might not understand that there really is like months and years involved in a lot of the testing and forensics and gathering all your evidence. And so some of them may be like, wow, why is it not working out like the way I imagine it would? So yeah, I almost can't watch those shows because they dumb down forensics so bad.
Well, they totally have. And then it just really raises people's expectations of what's going to happen next. And it's a slow moving process. I mean, we've seen multiple cases that meander through the criminal justice system and can take years because of not only the investigation, maybe lagging, dragging, the testing going, but then you have to get through the justice system, which can take years before you go to trial. And it has to be very frustrating for Brittany's family, for the victim's family, having to wait 2 years to see an arrest in this case.
Yeah, I agree. I think 1 to 3 years is typical of these types of cases, honestly,
Yeah.
from what we've researched.
I mean, I'm glad that this guy's finally been arrested, but I can't imagine what her family's had to go through for the past few years, just playing this like waiting game.
Well, if you have an idea of who did something to your loved one, and while they are putting their case together, and they need to be very careful how they do that, or they can screw it all up, And so sometimes it's better for them to wait 2 years than to jump the gun and not have a solid case against a perpetrator. But it must be just horrifying for the family to know that person's out there.
Free?
Yeah.
Yeah, because according to one of the articles I read here, this gentleman had already left Cashiers and had moved on, I believe, back to Missouri.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a ways from Cashiers.
Yeah.
Western North
I believe
Carolina.
Originally they were from like the St. Louis area or something. So, not only is this guy finally being arrested, but then they have to extradite him back and all of that. Are you ready to get into today's true crime case, Dylan?
I am. I cannot wait to see what you have in store
This
for
is
us.
one of those cases that the world, I believe, people are just super fascinated with it because it really gets into some psychology of like, why and how did this happen?
I agree completely.
We're going to be talking about Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh my gosh.
Which, if you've seen today's episode title, then you know that.
I gotta say, I think he's top 10. And
Oh, absolutely.
certainly for our people in their 40s, for our we grew up, we saw this happen in real time.
Play it out, yeah.
This was our generation's Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, and
Ed Gein, exactly.
Ed Gein. I remember BTK. I felt like played out, and I remember that happening.
Oh, yeah.
But this is just one of those cases that's come kind of back to the forefront in people's in the conversation of what a horrible crime, and but at the same time you have this almost complex character that perpetrated the crime. So it's interesting for true crime fans.
It definitely is, Dylan. So we're going to get into discussing Jeffrey Dahmer in just a second. But before we get started, I wanted to go ahead and let you guys know some of the books that I read for today's case is Anne E. Schwartz's Monster, The True Story of the Jeffrey Dahmer Murders. That has been a really good resource in my investigation, in my study of Dahmer here. And also Jeffrey Dahmer, A Terrifying True Story of Rape, Murder. Of course, my Kindle is going to do something really crazy when I'm looking at this. Murder, Cannibalism by Jack Rosewood.
Rape, murder, and cannibalism.
Yes.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
It really is a lot in one group.
And, we were always like, we're not going to cover Dahmer, but we are in the state of Ohio covering all the, I guess, just fascinating cases from that state. And I feel like we can't talk about Ohio without glossing over Dahmer, bro.
No, we hit another very famous case out of Ohio, the Roden murders. And I think we almost have to discuss Mr. Dahmer.
We do. And I even asked our patrons, hey, would you guys like an episode on Dahmer? I was not sure what the response would be because the market seems to be saturated with Dahmer information. But they were like, Heather, you have to do Dahmer. So here we are. We're doing the Dahmer.
Yeah, the reaction I could tell was, fuck yeah, America.
Exactly. So let's get into it. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born May 21st of 1960 to Annette Joyce Flint, whose nickname was Rocky, and Lionel Dahmer. By all accounts, his parents came from normal, well-adjusted families living in the West Allis suburb of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Native Wisconsinites, the Dahmers had a small extended family who resided nearby, so there were always relatives willing to babysit young Jeffrey.
And that's always handy for a family to have support like that.
Lionel was working on advanced degrees in chemistry at Marquette University. This meant he didn't have a lot of free time. He was usually in a classroom or a lab and then studying or working on his dissertation. Lionel was away from Joyce and Jeffrey for extended periods of time. Joyce complained about her husband's absenteeism, but he assured her once school was done, Lionel would find a good paying job and the family would resume a more quote unquote normal schedule together.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot with the couples. You have one or the other, or sometimes both, finishing up school, finishing up their degree. And they may know they're going to struggle for 3 or 4 or 5 years, but they always have a goal in mind. Once we reach this finish line, then things will be better.
Yeah, exactly. And especially when you're pursuing those advanced degrees, especially something like science, because you are in a classroom, you have a lot of lab work to be done. Typically, if you're on some kind of fellowship or scholarship, you have to serve as a teaching assistant or a lab assistant or, always doing some kind of research. So it is a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It can really strain relationships.
I would say I'm no expert. You know more than I do about college degrees, but I'm sure some of this can stretch out to 6, 8, 9 years, depending on what you're going for.
Right. It has been said that Joyce was struggling. After marrying Lionel in 1959, Joyce quickly became pregnant. During the pregnancy, she suffered from muscle stiffness and nausea. According to Lionel, she received injections of phenobarbital and morphine during the pregnancy. It was clear Jeffrey's home life was less than ideal, but nothing was extreme or traumatic enough to create a serial killer that we can find.
Now, that's some pretty heavy medication for a pregnant woman. Would you agree?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
Now we have Lionel's side of the story, though Joyce has spoken briefly to the press, which paints her as a mentally unstable woman. So again, this is mostly coming from her ex-husband. And as we know, Dylan, sometimes exes are not the most reliable when it comes to giving us a good description of one's character, right?
Yeah, I believe my ex would not be the person that I would want to describe me to someone. Does that make sense? Would you, and you probably feel the same way?
Well,
mostly?
I wouldn't want your ex to describe me to someone either because she's insane.
You wouldn't want your exes to either, but my ex is extra crazy. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes. Jeffrey would admit later there were good times and bad times, but it was a fairly normal life. He said, quote, "It really wasn't a terrible childhood, though." Now, Lionel will later say that Jeffrey was sexually abused
Really?
as a young boy, I believe by a neighbor. But Jeffrey will state that he has absolutely no recollection of this.
Yeah, and that could either be not true or Jeffrey's brain's blocking it out, a traumatic event.
Right. So we don't really know if this is perhaps Lionel trying to justify his son's behavior or make some connection like, oh, well, it must be this event. But Jeffrey says he absolutely doesn't know anything about it, and no one else in the family's really spoken about it. There were never criminal charges, anything like that. So it's kind of hard to prove those allegations.
Now, sometimes I've tried to imagine what it would be like to be the parent of one of these killers, or a kid that even now in the modern day that goes and does a spree killing at school or something, or a mass shooting at a school. You'd be beside yourself.
Yeah.
To try to explain why this happened. And you would be, I don't know if you would feel ashamed, responsible, guilty.
I mean,
what could I have done
I would
differently?
imagine that entire range of emotions and probably a few we can't fathom.
So it wouldn't surprise me if someone reached and thought of all the things that it could be, maybe, and even create some kind of a thing that maybe this happened. I thought something happened, but now I don't know. You would just be so confused and hurt and like you said, guilty, because as a parent, you feel responsibility for what your child does.
You do, even though sometimes kids just going to do shit, whether you've taught them not to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, we can't really control other people's behaviors, even when it comes to our children.
No, but even personally on a much smaller level, I've wondered, hey, are my kids doing these things because of me? I think that's a thought that's going to come into.
It's a very natural thought. Exactly. Lionel had to consider financial issues such as funding graduate school, which is very expensive. There's a lot of competition, Dylan, for assistantships, fellowships, grants, scholarships. So he felt he had to follow the money, so to speak. In 1962, Lionel accepted an assistantship to study for his PhD at Iowa State University. He loaded the family up and moved to Ames, Iowa. The academic program was top tier, but Ames was not a place for the Dahmers. Although it was still the Midwest and they were only like a day's drive away from home, like back in Wisconsin, they weren't really happy living in Ames. 4 years later, Lionel earned his PhD from Iowa State. Lionel landed a full-time job teaching in Akron, Ohio, which meant the Dahmers were financially stable for once, and they would be able to settle down in one place and like establish roots, finally have the family home.
So they spent about 4 years in the place they didn't care for once they moved there.
In Iowa, yeah.
Yeah, that would kind of suck.
It would suck, and you're away from home.
But again, you have this goal in mind, this
Exactly.
finish line. If we can only get here, And so now it seems like they finally arrived, and now we have a little bit of stability in Akron.
Exactly. So, not long after the move to Ohio, Jeffrey seemed to have a morbid fascination with dead animals. It began innocently enough, but over time turned into a sick obsession. Unlike a lot of serial killers, Jeffrey wasn't interested in killing animals. When he was 2, he and his father found an injured bird outside. They nursed it back to health and released it. Dahmer was more interested in the decomposition of dead things. He also wanted to learn more about their organs and skeletal structures. Lionel, with a scientific background, thought it was kind of cool that his son was taking an active interest in biology and chemistry. When Jeffrey brought home dead animal carcasses, Lionel showed him how to bleach the bones. So this all starts out in Lionel's head as like very, innocent but interesting hobby for his son.
Yeah, I mean, I must say, I find bones and skulls and things like that very interesting, and we've discussed this personally, and but at the same time, it's like I would just want to deal with the bones.
Right.
I don't want to deal with anything before the bones are bleached and cleaned and like ready for display. So
You're not trying to deal with like the meat,
no,
the tissue,
no.
the muscle.
I don't need flesh-eating beetles. I don't want to boil things until they're clean and peroxide and bleach them and all that. But like an exploded skull or something like that, I find very fascinating as a display piece. But would you be disturbed if one of your children showed a very strong interest in like dead animals?
You know what? I might just be excited if my kid had an interest in anything, okay, besides sitting in her room on the phone.
Well, that's true. And at first you'd be like, oh, well, it's just like they're learning about life and death. But like if they were wanted to like get it and like watch it and mess with it, would you find that weird? I think it would strike a chord with me.
Well, I don't know because we're pretty weird.
What's true?
I mean, we do collect a lot of wet specimens and oddities.
Yes. And you literally handle bodies now, dead bodies. So there's that. But I don't know. I guess it would depend on how intense their obsession or fascination with it was.
I would probably be more concerned if my child came to me and was like, hey, I'm going to become a nun.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Hot take.
Oh, I'm just saying.
Yeah, that is scary. That's very scary.
In our chaotic household, that would probably be the most rebellious thing that she could do, right?
So it's like either join a cult or mess with dead animals. That's the spectrum.
I guess so.
All right.
Okay, so at age 7, Dahmer caught tadpoles for a teacher. He gave them to her, but later learned she had allowed his best friend to take the jar of tadpoles home. He was very mad about this.
Yeah, this must have been a defining moment kind of in the Dahmer story, because it was even represented in the Dahmer series on Netflix, this very situation. And he even struck out against the other kid who got the tadpoles.
Well, lashing out, in real life, Jeffrey poured motor oil into the tadpole bucket. So he had a malicious streak pretty early on, as we can see now. In 1968, he moved to Bath, Ohio, where he enrolled in Bath Elementary School. The house in Bath was a sprawling rancher on 1.7 acres of land. It was a wooded lot with a spring-fed pond and plenty of spaces for a young boy to roam. I mean, honestly, this sounds like a fucking pretty awesome house to grow up in.
Yeah, I want to move there now.
I know, right? His father gifted him a chemistry set, and Jeffrey enjoyed sticking bugs in jars. He even fashioned an animal cemetery in his backyard. Jeffrey took dead animals, impaling their heads on sticks, and drying out their hides. One day, while fishing with neighborhood boys, Jeffrey chopped his catch up into little pieces, examining all the inner workings of the fish.
Yeah, that's totally normal.
He also had a habit of pressing his head against his friends' chests so he could hear their heartbeat.
Again, totally normal.
Which, the other kids in the neighborhood thought this was a little strange.
Would that weird you out? Like if you just had a friend who's like, I just want to listen to your heartbeat.
Probably.
Yeah.
Because I don't really like to be touched
You're inside my personal space.
by people.
Please remove your ear from my chest.
Exactly. Please don't touch me. I recoil. A neighbor of Jeffrey's, whose son often played with Dahmer, noticed that he was a child who seemed to desperately want to please adults. This mother described him as a child that she thought anticipated like what she expected of him and kind of always went out of his way to do the right thing. And then when she would like say to him, oh, good job, Jeffrey, or I appreciate you did that he would just beam with pride.
Oh, yeah.
Like he was desperately seeking approval from adults.
I thought you was going to say Susan.
That as well. Yeah.
Desperately seeking Susan.
Yeah. He wanted the jacket with the pyramid on the back. In 1974, Jeffrey went to Revere High School where he played clarinet in the band his freshman year. He also played tennis and worked on the school newspaper during his junior year. But despite his participation in a few high school activities, Jeffrey was mostly a loner. Considered an oddball, he had few friends and had weird hobbies like dead animals.
The dead animals thing, that would quickly become, for me as a parent, like, wow, this is a lot. Like, I mean, when you're just gathering all these dead animals into one space, even if it's an outside building or a room or his grandmother's basement, it's just, it would quickly become, like, I would find it a bit strange. You know what I mean? Do you agree?
Well, would you find it odd if he was like a hunter and his hobby was hunting and he was out killing animals?
Well,
I mean, would you think that was weird, or is it just the collection of animals for you?
I'm sure there's been, world-renowned taxidermists and hunters and things like this, like you're describing, that did this at an early age. Were just kind of fascinated by the animal form.
You just don't like his death menagerie, is what you're saying.
Just the smell. You know what I mean? I mean, like if you're wanting me to stop and like get roadkill for you and shit, I don't know. That would strike me as a bit odd. Uh-huh. But it's not always necessarily this person's going to be like a maniac monster. They could just be, fascinated by the animal. Like I said, could turn into a world-renowned taxidermist or something like that. Or it could lead them into a medical degree, with humans by being fascinated by the innards of animals, I guess. But I think it's for most people it would be off-putting to a degree.
You're probably right. I'm going to go ahead and apologize. I am getting some sort of sinusy thing.
Oh my gosh.
I feel very stuffy and I probably sound super nasally. I apologize. I don't mean to be friend Russia, but I am.
You don't sound too bad, babe.
So by high school, Jeffrey was also drinking. As we know, he would show up his sophomore year with a cup of scotch at 8 a.m.
Okay.
Just reeking of alcohol. Someone should have taken Jeffrey aside and asked him why he was drinking, but no one bothered. Not students, not adults in his life.
Who walks around with a cup of scotch when he's a young person? That really, what is he?
Okay, I just don't understand why anybody wants to drink scotch, period. But especially like a sophomore in high school.
I've got to say, I've tried cheap scotch, high dollar scotch. Maybe it's just not for me. Maybe it's an acquired taste.
Care for it.
But, some people love it. But I really think it's an acquired taste and something you just kind of stick with because it is, it's very specific, let's say.
Yeah, it makes me want to throw up.
Oh my gosh.
Like the minute it hits my throat, I'm like...
I can imagine being a teenager showing up with like a glass of a single malt. Just,
I mean...
neat.
Yeah, exactly. In 9th grade, Jeffrey recalled dissecting fetal pigs in biology class. He took the remains home, keeping the skeleton. From there, he branched out to dogs and cats. But instead of it becoming a taxidermy hobby, Dylan, it, as we know, led to a much darker place. The dissection stirred something in him, and he wanted to see what was inside the animals. In a later interview, Dahmer will admit the process was very exciting. It became a compulsion. There was certainly a sexual stimulation aspect to it all.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
That was creepy.
That was a little, yeah, just keep your feelings to yourself, Dylan.
Okay.
His tennis coach remembered Jeffrey as a kid who minded his own business. He attended the prom with a young woman named Bridget, who was coerced by friends to go with him. She described him as extremely awkward. He fumbled with the corsage, eventually surrendering it to the girl's mother
Well, I don't think he's the first guy to do that.
to pin it on. And he left halfway through the dance to go buy fast food hamburgers.
Just try and take some photos, man. Relax.
So this girl will later say she invited him to a seance at her house. Like, they had a group of people over and were trying to perform a seance. And that she got freaked out when someone suggested to Jeffrey that he summoned Lucifer. She said Jeffrey just made her feel uncomfortable because he was so weird and emotionless. And that was like the last time she really hung out with him.
Okay.
Was at the seance. And I'm like, well, he wasn't trying to summon Lucifer. Someone else told him to.
What the hell?
To make friends, Jeffrey became a bit of a prankster. In the 1978 Revere High School yearbook, he posed with the National Honor Society, though he was not a member. The school blacked out his face before it went to press. Kids called it doing a Dahmer when he pretended to have a seizure. He would sort of jerk and throw himself on the ground.
That's interesting. My son was in the National Honor Society. And he was actually in the who's who of the National Honor Society, which is the top 10% of the National Honor Society, which is already like top 10% of all kids.
Right?
Yeah. Are you going to ask me now what he does for a living?
No.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, how did you raise such a smart kid?
Oh, well.
See, again, nature versus nurture.
No, well, yeah. I'm saying I could have
Your
been.
son must be like an anomaly.
No, I could have been the. No, I'm going to stop you right there. I could have been not done all that shit,
You could have.
but I just didn't have the right proper support.
You didn't.
No,
Honey, I'm just kidding.
no, it's okay. It's okay, but he works at Staples now.
You're the smartest dumb person I know, Dylan. You're really smart, but you also have no common sense. And it's just amazing to me how someone can be so smart and so dumb at the same time.
And if you need
I'm
some
mesmerized by you.
office supplies in Waynesville, North Carolina, you go there and you see my son, and just know that he was actually in a club that is likely rubbing elbows with the world dignitaries to, lead the future. But he works at Staples. So there's that.
Are you proud of him? I feel like you're going to say that.
Of course I'm proud of
Good.
my child.
Okay,
But at the
good.
same time, you're just like, okay, these kids are different nowadays than we were.
During a field trip to Washington, D.C., Dahmer prank called the Office of the Vice President of the United States.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know you could just call them up, but maybe in the 70s you can. Can I prank call Harris's office and be like, hey, somebody put me on the phone with that laughing ass bitch?
Yeah, somebody get the cackling bitch on the phone. I want to talk to her. I want to ask her a serious question. See if see if she can give me a
Sorry.
serious answer.
That's pretty much the only response you're going to get out of Kamala Harris.
And to be clear, we don't support anybody.
No.
We're going for Asteroid 2024.
Yes. So the kids thought this was hilarious that Dahmer is calling the vice president's office and making a prank call.
That's pretty hardcore.
But teachers reprimanded him. It was during his senior year of high school that Jeffrey was also feeling blacked out at home. His parents were in the midst of a bitter divorce and custody dispute over his younger brother David, who was 12 at the time. Dahmer's drinking was out of control. He often showed up to school drunk, as I mentioned. I also told you by the age of 14, he was pretty much a full-blown alcoholic.
Wow.
His peers knew Dahmer kept a pint of liquor and a beer in his locker at school, and he often wore an army jacket to conceal what he was consuming at the time. So he would carry around a flask, a pint, a beer, just crammed in the pockets of this army jacket.
That's pretty hardcore for someone that age to be drinking alcohol that much.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're still, alcohol is dangerous and hard for anyone to consume too much, any age, but you're still developing, you're still growing, learning things.
Yeah.
And I could only imagine at that age if I'd have added alcohol on a daily basis to my life, that would be really messed up.
Yeah. You'd just be a big hot mess.
Yeah, I would have literally been a big hot mess.
And Dahmer was a big hot mess.
And it seems that alcohol has played a part in his entire life, everything that transpired for him. And like you're saying, it started at a very, very early age.
He told his friends it was medicine. And now we can see that he was probably numbing those homicidal impulses by drinking heavily. When he was caught at school, teachers would merely give him a warning. I guess the 1970s were a different time.
It's true.
During puberty, Jeffrey realized he was a homosexual. Having grown up with a conservative Midwestern family, Jeffrey hid the secret for fear he'd be ostracized. And though he lived his life as a gay man, Jeffrey would never come out to his family.
Ever.
Wow.
Wow.
By 15, Dahmer was experiencing sexual fantasies peppered with violence. His desires were vivid sadomasochistic fantasies, and they really seemed to get worse as time passed, like more depraved. And he felt his strange sexual desires become an obsession.
Yeah, so you couple these feelings with his fascination with dead things, for lack of a better word. And not only that, he wants to see the interior. He wants to see how things work, the guts, and like being fascinated by, dissecting a frog or a pig in class, and just not be, just being totally mesmerized by that. And that's just really almost a very dangerous, sickening combination, really, if you think about it.
Absolutely. He began planning to abduct a jogger. But every time he got close, Jeffrey chickened out. Because the divorce was so bad between his parents, Jeffrey was left alone most of the summer of 1978. Lionel was given custody of his younger brother David, but both parents seemed to forget they had an older son.
And I think that happens. You think your older children are more capable and maybe need less attention, but oftentimes that's not true. And if you have a much younger child, you worry for them, and that you not obsess, but you concentrate on them during these situations. And a lot of times other kids will feel left out.
Joyce moved to northern Wisconsin with David, and Lionel moved to a hotel in Akron. Neither checked in on their son Jeffrey. He drank as much as he wanted. He managed to graduate, and his parents attended the graduation, but then went on to, their lives once again. Just
a brief, hey, wow, cool, you graduated.
Yeah, good for you, bud.
Graduated, but he felt ignored before that, I'm sure, for a long time. And then just, hey, we concentrate on you for a minute, and then you're just an afterthought.
Yeah.
That's a horrible feeling for a young person.
Well, and I'll have to get to this. So Lionel got custody of David, but then Joyce just left town with him. Almost like kidnapping her son.
Yeah.
Because she didn't have legal custody of him and took him across state lines.
Yeah.
So that's going to come into play here in a minute. But June 18th, 1978 was like any day. From the moment he woke up, Jeffrey was drinking. He ran to the liquor store for more booze, and as he made his way home, Jeffrey almost crashed his car when he saw an attractive young man hitchhiking. Quickly, he offered the man a ride. 18-year-old Stephen Hicks accepted. He was on his way to a concert in Cleveland. Dahmer offered him the chance to drink a few beers before getting back on the road, which Hicks accepted. Though Hicks wasn't gay, he was described as a street-smart young man, which would make the trip to a stranger's house kind of unusual in retrospect. Like, according to his family, they thought it was kind of odd that he agreed to go hang out with Jeffrey.
Yeah, and I must say, they kind of play Jeffrey as goofy, not having a whole lot of a game, I guess you would call it. but he was persuasive in some kind of a way. And I think maybe it might have been that goofiness that was almost disarming to people.
Yeah.
Like, wow, he's a little goofy or whatever, but he's not scary.
Can I just say something about Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yeah.
He is the most fucking boring human being on the planet.
Yes.
There is nothing interesting about this guy. Like, besides the fact that we're all interested in the psychological aspect of Dahmer, of the why and how, but if you take that part of him away, he's the most fucking boring person on the planet.
And I think that's a great point.
He's so lame.
And I really seriously think that characteristic, that vibe, is how people ended up in his trap.
Just no personality.
They had
very monotone and boring and bland.
They had no idea of what he was capable of.
No.
Until the last moment when it was too late.
Exactly. No, I think you're spot on with this. God, he's just so fucking dull.
Just relax,
He is like the epitome of mayo too spicy guy.
Do you want a beer? You want another beer, man? I can't do a Dahmer. I
Yeah,
can't do a
like
Midwestern.
he's just a big fucking drunk who's just boring. Just lame.
Smashing Budweiser, baby.
It was a particularly hot day, so Hicks wasn't wearing a shirt. Dahmer was drawn to the man's bare chest. Back at the house, the pair began drinking. Jeffrey's plan was to get his young guest intoxicated in order to victimize him. The 6-foot-tall Dahmer had been lifting weights almost every day and was physically strong, despite the fact that he was he was like kind of tall and lean guy, but he was muscular. He was stout. When Hicks tried to leave, Dahmer blocked him. But Hicks was athletic too, and he was able to push past Jeffrey. But Hicks made a mistake. He turned his back on Dahmer in order to walk to the door. And that's when Jeffrey Dahmer took a 10-pound dumbbell, hitting Hicks in the back of the head. The blow killed Stephen Hicks. Later, Dahmer will describe his encounter with Hicks's body, saying he laid down beside the dead man for several hours before masturbating.
Okay. And that is not at all strange.
Necrophilia was not yet in Dahmer's wheelhouse, so afterwards he cleaned up the murder scene. For Dahmer, cleanup wasn't a task, it was fun. So I would say for most killers, the cleanup is like the probably least
Yeah, it's just like
fun part of the excitement, right? I mean, nobody wants to clean.
It's just a byproduct of the other things they wanted to do. It's like a task to be taken care of later. But for Dahmer, I think that was a big part of it. He enjoyed
that's
that.
The thing. He's such a unique study because he actually enjoyed this aspect of the killing ritual, the cleanup. Jeffrey took Hicks to the bathtub and began dissecting his body. It took hours to do. Dahmer was increasingly sexually excited during this process. But the thing is, Lionel was due to visit Jeffrey at any moment. So he buried the body under the crawl space of the home, much like John Wayne Gacy, who was also operating at this time.
Jesus.
Later, Dahmer dug up the body, dissolving the remains in acid and flushing them down the toilet. The remaining bones were smashed with a sledgehammer, then spread around the woods behind the house. Jeffrey would later tell police, quote, "Once it happened the first time, it just seemed like it had control of my life from there on."
And I think that's true in a lot of cases. You know, that first kill or that first situation, they may kind of stumble into it, and then they realize they get this exhilarating feeling or the sexual
just a gratification.
And they realize that this is the thing they want to do now.
The divorce was granted only 6 days after Jeffrey committed his first murder, and I mean his parents' divorce. When Lionel stopped by the house for his visit with David, Jeffrey informed him that Joyce had already taken their youngest son and fled the state. The house was in shambles. Lionel noted that Jeff had a broken fridge, there was no money in the house, and no food in the house. Lionel was granted custody after Joyce left for Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, and was able to try to track down his son, David, using legal means at this point. But while in Wisconsin, David was involved in criminal damage to railroad property in which switching mechanisms were destroyed.
Okay.
So he's kind of on his own bad course.
So he's acting out as well.
Yes.
In his own way. Vandalism.
Joyce herself went back to school, eventually earning a bachelor's degree in speech from University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire. She would move to Fresno, California, and work as a case manager for AIDS patients, later resuming her maiden name, Flint. She refused all interviews with the press, and she died in 2000. But let's get on with our story. That's really all we know about Joyce. Lionel would later feel a great sense of regret and guilt about what happened, stating he should have been more actively involved in Jeffrey's life. However, Jeff was extremely private. Lionel tried to motivate his son to pursue education, just something in life, hobbies, and especially Christ, that he should try to find religion, be involved in church, but nothing seemed to stick when it came to his son. Lionel was a member of a Church of Christ, and he would send Jeffrey audio tapes and reading materials about Jesus, but Jeffrey was never interested in this.
Well, I'm sure Lionel was like every other parent. They just want their children to be successful, at least be able to do for themselves, have a decent life. And and as they go along their life, they're not going to do everything you say, but you can suggest and try to push them to things and keep trying to make new suggestions if it's not working out. And it seems like with the divorce, it came at a time in Dahmer's life where he was dealing with a lot of other things and emotions, trying to figure himself out with being gay, and then with the whole, everything else, obsession with dead animals. He's not sure what's going on in his own mind, all these strange feelings. And then all of a sudden his parents are getting, it didn't sound like a very good divorce.
No.
It sounded
Tumultuous.
Tenuous,
Dylan.
Yes, at the very least. And then he has his younger brother who's kind of, taken by his mother, and everything's just a mess. And it's like he was kind of left as an afterthought to everything while everyone else figured their stuff out. But yeah, and then once Lionel gets on the other side of the divorce, he's worried about Jeffrey and wants him to do things and try things and be successful. And Jeffrey just didn't seem to want any part of that. He already seemed to have a wall up around himself for various reasons, even between him and his father or his mother.
It was on June 24th that Martha Hicks reported her son missing. The Hicks family was accustomed to Stephen staying out with friends and such, but when they didn't hear from him for a week, they reported him missing to Summit County Sheriff's Department. And the family offered a $2,500 reward for any information leading to, locating Stephen. Finally, Lionel encouraged his son to enroll at Ohio State University as a business major. But college would prove to be another epic failure for Jeffrey. His room was filled with liquor bottles. He spent his first semester drinking to excess, showing up for class drunk, if he even showed up at all. And he would sometimes pass out in the streets.
Well, a lot of kids, their first experiences with alcohol can be in college or with it, drinking to excess. And Jeffrey's already been doing this for years.
He has been.
Since he's 13, 14 years old. So, 6, 7 years at this point, or whatever, for many years. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that he's just going to lean even more into that in a college environment.
Yep. In fall of 1978, police questioned him in the theft of a watch, radio, and $120 stolen from a dorm room. He was never arrested, but left school soon after, which was fine anyway because he was flunking out.
Did you say a watch, radio?
A watch, a radio.
And a radio?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was about to say that sounds really cool. We had all kinds of weird gadgets back in the day.
Do you remember how super cool a Casio watch used to be?
Yes. Do you remember how super cool the tiniest TV you've ever seen with like a little 4x4 square?
Oh,
People would
yeah.
have them in their kitchens and stuff. And that was just like the.
Well, my dad was a trucker and my
Yeah.
papa was a trucker. And I remember they both had tiny TVs
With like an antenna on it.
in their
Yeah.
trucks,
Yeah.
like in the sleeper. And I thought those TVs were the coolest thing I'd ever seen
It was.
because it was so tiny. And of course, it was like black and white TV.
Of course.
And shitty.
But if you could pick up anything on it, you were living the high life.
I wanted like a Casio watch. Like I wanted the watch that had the calculator,
Yeah.
That
was the ultimate.
I have no idea why I wanted that.
You
but
could
I did.
spell boobs on it. And other words.
I'm sure Jeffrey was not spelling boobs on his Casio watch.
No, he's spelling dead, rotting
He was probably trying to spell balls. It was near the close of 1978 that Lionel remarried a woman named Sherry Jordan. Sherry described her stepsons as her nemesis and was very upset that her husband had to pay child support. Well, fuck you, Sherry.
Well, damn, Sherry. So that's obviously Sherry didn't bring any good energy into Jeffrey's realm or his sphere, if you will.
According to friends who knew Sherry well, they said she despised David and thought Jeffrey was no damn good.
Okay.
Sherry was described by a college friend, and this was Sherry's own friend, as, quote, the epitome of a wicked stepmother.
Nice.
So her own friends are calling her a wicked stepmother. So that's not going to be helpful.
That's just a terrible energy.
No.
And like, if you marry someone and you're a step parent or you're coming into, they already have children, you should, it's just a horrible situation to be at odds completely with those children. And you always can't control it. And it's on the kids as well to kind of, have a give and take with you. But even if I didn't care for the kids, I don't think I would have this kind of venom or this kind of venom towards them. You know what I mean? I mean, I guess it's tricky. Every situation is different. But I just don't think that's just not going to help anything. It's
No,
not going to.
not
It's
at
going to
all.
make it worse and harder for you.
Yeah, absolutely. 5 days after the marriage, Jeffrey enlisted in the U.S. Army. In January of 1979, he reported for duty in Alabama, hoping to become a military policeman. Instead, Jeffrey was assigned as a medical specialist at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas. By summer, he was sent to West Germany, Baumholder, where Dahmer would serve as a combat medic at a medical aid station. He was drinking and would pass out listening to Black Sabbath every night.
Yeah, war pigs, bitch.
Sometimes Jeffrey would disappear for an entire weekend and let no one know where he had been. So we're unaware of his activities in Germany. It is very likely he was committing crimes over there and got away with it. There were 5 unsolved mutilation murders near Baumholder during the time he was stationed there, but so far there's been no real link to Jeffrey Dahmer.
Ooh, I've never heard that tidbit before.
He never spoke of his family and left everyone alone. He was just absolutely like a total loner, Dylan. Didn't hang out with anybody, always by himself, always drinking alone. But he would have these sudden belligerent outbursts when he was drunk. A number of those would be directed at black soldiers.
Oh, wow.
Oddly enough, Jeffrey was a terrible medical specialist because he said he didn't have the stomach to draw blood.
That does not add up, honestly.
And would have these racist tirades
Yeah.
when he was drunk.
Yeah, that is not a good look for anyone. But there you go. You have alcohol. It just makes you it just turns your brain off in a way that where you just do dumb shit. You're an asshole. You're just not an unpleasant person to be around. It can do that.
Yeah, I know.
I've been told.
I know a few people like that.
Yeah, me too.
9 months before the end of his 3-year enlistment, Jeffrey Dahmer was discharged under an Army regulation concerning drugs and alcohol. Dahmer's squad leader recalled driving him to the airport, and he knew something was gnawing at Jeffrey, and when he asked, Dahmer would say there was something, but he couldn't talk about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, something's wrong, but I'm not going to tell you about it.
There were men in the military who accused Jeffrey Dahmer of rape. A man from Arkansas named Billy Joe Capshaw was like many soldiers who were in the army at the time, young, naive. He arrived in West Germany with a positive attitude, but that quickly declined. He was assigned to live in the barracks with Jeffrey Dahmer as a roommate.
Nice.
Now, according to Capshaw, Dahmer almost immediately began sexually assaulting him. He was tying Capshaw to the bunk with a motor pool rope. He took away all of Capshaw's clothing and would either beat Capshaw before the rape or after.
Well, that's terrible. That's horrifying.
Some don't believe Capshaw, but he says coming forward was very difficult. And at the time, there was so much stigma surrounding male-on-male sexual assaults that he just couldn't tell anyone about it.
And I would believe that, honestly, because it's taken, I think there's still issues with assault, both male and female in the armed services.
Yep.
And even back then, I could imagine someone being scared to come forward because, well, there's still a stigma around males being assaulted and raped.
There absolutely is.
And, some people think it's funny if, say, a big, strong woman beats up on a man or something like that. There's still these odd double standards to things like that. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit if he was afraid to come forward.
Well, though today, I mean, let's be honest, it's not much better, but the military is finally acknowledging that it's a problem. More like an epidemic.
Yeah, an epidemic, honestly.
Another soldier named Preston Davis was stationed with Dahmer in Germany. He was also a combat medic, and Davis claims that Dahmer drugged and raped him inside an armored vehicle during a training exercise. He actually did report the incident, but it was ignored by the command. Nothing was done.
And see, I could only imagine for any victim that reports, goes up the chain of command, and then nothing's done. I mean, I can only imagine how helpless, hurt, and scared you would be at that point.
Yeah. It's pretty horrifying. So once Dahmer is out of the military, he moved to Miami and worked in a sandwich shop. During this time, Jeffrey would say nothing happened as far as criminal activity is concerned. However, Dylan, the name Adam Walsh ring any bells?
Yeah.
Right.
America's Most Wanted, John Walsh's son.
I was going to say, I think just about anybody in our age group is going to know the name Adam Walsh. That was probably, as a child, my first real brush with like a crime, a big news story. Because I remember when that happened, and my mother was like obsessed with child abductions in the 80s.
It was a big deal. Even to this day, it was such a big deal. To this day, a code Adam in the store is to lock the store down and look for a missing or abducted child, and to not let anyone out until we find the child. And so that was a huge case, and that went on to affect many different things.
It did. So if you're not familiar, Adam Walsh was a 6-year-old boy abducted from a Sears store in Hollywood, Florida back in July of 1981. Sadly, his head was found in a canal in Vero Beach, about 120 miles away.
It doesn't make any sense.
Now, police tried to establish if there was any connection to Dahmer, but have ultimately connected the child's murder to serial killer Otis Toole.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. That's tricky because they, him and who was his buddy?
Henry Lee Lucas?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
They have been proven to admit to a lot of things they did not do. Now, they certainly, I think it's easy to say they did.
Now, I'm pretty sure, Dylan, that they are like certain that Otis Toole had committed this crime.
No shit.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. This is
Wow.
like known for some years now.
Wow. Okay.
I'm pretty sure like the vehicle, I mean, there was
Like
just
he had real details that no one knew,
Yeah.
and this is one of the stories they admitted to that was basically proven true.
yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, you need to look into that.
Damn,
Can't believe you didn't know that.
I just
And
don't
you
understand.
call yourself a true crime aficionado.
Look, you can't keep up with all of it. It's a lot, but I just cannot imagine who would do that to a child. I mean,
Some fucking weirdo like Otis Toole.
so monstrous and
He's
so horrible.
Yeah, well, he is a fucking horrible freak person. From Florida, Dahmer returned to Ohio to stay with Lionel and Sherry. On October 7th of 1981, Jeffrey was arrested at a Ramada Inn in Bath, charged with disorderly conduct, open container, and resisting arrest. Apparently, he liked to go to this Ramada Inn. There was a bar, and he would drink and get rowdy.
Dahmer and the alcohol, bro. If he'd have stayed away from the alcohol, maybe it would have helped him out a little bit.
During this time, Jeffrey would stay at bars until closing time, become argumentative when asked to leave, which often resulted in his removal, forcefully, by bouncers. He had stitches over his eye and broken ribs during this time because he kept getting his ass kicked by bouncers at bars.
So basically, he's the belligerent, I don't have to listen to you drunk, who they try to clear out at closing time, and then he wants to start some shit. And then he's not a real big guy.
Oh, no.
I say kind of medium build, 6 foot tall, and he would just get his ass kicked.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. His dad said he would come home with black eyes, he would get stitches, busted up lips, because he was going out to bars and getting his ass beat. Instead of job hunting, Jeffrey spent his time in parks getting drunk. He wandered around town just harassing people. I think this is a side of Dahmer that we don't know a lot about, but this is all like true.
What the hell, Jeffrey?
Like he was just drunk and would be harassing people.
So he's just been a belligerent drunk since he was
Yes.
like 14 years old.
Yes. He had a large cachet of booze in the house, which Lionel discovered and was not happy about this. I mean, Lionel's not okay with this behavior. He's married. You know, obviously Jeffrey and the stepmom don't get along. Lionel's like a church-going man. He doesn't carry on and drink and participate in these kinds of shenanigans.
Well, I think in everything I've ever seen about Dahmer, the various movies, the latest series, his father kept coming back to him, wanting him to do better, wanting him to try something new, expecting more out of him, pushing him to kind of grow up and become a full-fledged adult.
Yeah.
Yeah, like any father would.
Like you need to get your shit together.
Yeah, you need to clean all the dead animals out of your grandmother's basement.
Oh, we're not there yet, Don. Several months after his arrest, Jeffrey moved in with his grandmother in West Allis, Wisconsin. Lionel thought it was a fresh start for his son. He loved his grandmother and could help her out with chores. It seemed like it would be a mutually beneficial move. He's got a free place to stay, you know, nice roof over his head,
He can help Graham
warm
out.
food, and then he can help his gran out with yard work and all the chores that she can't really complete anymore. Plus, you know, they love each other. Seems like his grandma might be one of the only people that he actually like had a kind of a loving relationship with.
Like he cared what she thought kind of thing.
Yeah.
For the most part.
It seems to be the case. Catherine Dahmer lived in a modest middle-class home in this West Allis, a neighborhood of mostly blue-collar families, but there were a lot of corner taverns. Jeffrey got a job at a Milwaukee blood plasma center, drawing blood, which was odd since he had been unable to do so while in the army. Or maybe he just didn't want to fucking do it.
Yeah. I'm thinking that he just was bucking on the system right there and was, for whatever reason, didn't want to do it. Because I cannot imagine that drawing a little bit of blood out would make Dahmer squeamish.
You don't
Considering
think so?
his talents later.
His life took a turn in August of 1982 when he attended the Wisconsin State Fair. He was drunk, dropped his pants in front of 25 people, including women and children. He was arrested and fined $25. After only 10 months, he was fired from the clinic. So he was unemployed for 2 years before finding work at the Ambrosia Chocolate Company, where he would earn $9 an hour. Now, this August of 1982 incident at the state fair, Jeffrey claims he was just trying to urinate, and then it happened to be in a public place.
Yeah.
Others say no, he was exposing himself, and there was speculation that he was masturbating in public.
Yeah, well, I mean, come on, dude. You're in a fair. You're at a public fair. So even if you are just trying to take a piss, like, I'm going to assume that he's loaded, drunk.
Yep.
He's got that beer piss, which literally makes you want to pee anywhere you can. And he's just, you got to find a bathroom. I mean, you got to be careful. So I don't know. I don't know if he was actively exposing himself.
As someone who has drunk peed in public many times in many places, I guess I can't judge him too harshly. But,
right. But I still...
But if it's just like, hey, I'm in doubt, so I'm whipping it out in front of women and children.
I
don't know.
I've managed to
It's
never...
not okay.
I've peed in a lot of places that I shouldn't have. But I've never done it in front of women and children. So,
That's not true. You've peed in front of me.
Well, that's not true.
And there was that one time that you peed in a parking deck in front of our children.
Well,
Your daughter was there too.
You're misconstruing the events. I don't remember most of that, so I'll take your word for that.
I have a video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We thought we would blackmail you with it later.
Well, I watched you pee on the wall of a parking garage, so there's that.
There weren't
if
children around.
No, there weren't. But I mean, if we
Okay.
want to talk about it, let's talk about it.
Okay.
It does take talent.
I do my Kegels.
I was impressed.
So it was at this time that he became a fixture at Milwaukee's gay club scene, but was kind of known as a loner who simply drank at the bar alone, not really socializing.
As a loner should.
Yeah. As a loner should, Dylan. Jeffrey had bought a .357 Magnum around the time he moved in with his grandmother for, quote, defense and target practice. Lionel, who had become increasingly aware of Jeffrey's alcoholism, went into his room before he moved to Wisconsin and took the gun. Jeffrey, he did respect his elders, the elders, in his family. So he didn't really put up a fight when his dad took his gun.
Okay.
And when he would be confronted about his drinking or behavior, he was, very respectful to his family. Like, he really wasn't confrontational and didn't try to rock the boat, argue,
even if he
blow
didn't
up on people.
Even if he didn't change his behaviors, he would kind of lead them to believe that he might.
Yes.
Or that he cared that they cared.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. As his sexual desires grew, Dahmer's insatiable urge to marry sex and violence continued. It wasn't enough to have sex with a partner. Dahmer wanted to control the men he found attractive. He began drugging his partners in order to have total submission and pliant sexual partners. Slowly but surely, he started buying over-the-counter sleeping pills. And this is when he begins drugging men at bath clubs. Which, the idea of a bath club is so weird to me. I guess I don't fully understand how it works. So, there are tubs, and you pay money to go in there and soak.
Yeah, I mean...
but there's like a sexual element to this?
It's always struck me as kind of like a sauna spa event. You know what I mean? And I think maybe it harkens back to the Roman bathhouses.
Okay.
Where you, hey, this is just in my mind. This is no fact, or I haven't checked any of this out. Where you have kind of these communal places where you go and soak in these very hot, steamy, leather-clad rooms, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. And then, people are just like hooking up in the dark alley next to the bathhouse. I don't know what's happening. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But here's what I think. You can go there and have like this kind of relaxing, I'm not going to say medicinal, but kind of like
a soak,
recreational.
almost like a spa.
A soak, spa, steam room experience.
Okay.
Or you can have this other type of experience. It depends on what you're looking for.
Like a sexy experience?
Yeah. Like a American Horror Story what is it now? 1980?
The New York City one.
New York City. Yeah, American Horror Story New York City experience.
Yeah, I just finished that.
They were going hard. Oh my God. Like literally hard.
This season was just kind of,
Did you finish it?
I did.
I got a couple left.
I just, the thing with American Horror Story is like the preview always looks really cool. And like the intro, is always like way better than the actual show.
I'm not sure what's going on with Ryan Murphy anymore, but I think he's like Metallica at 16, Ride the Lightning and all that. I don't think he can outdo himself early on. And I think he attempts to like have that same style, but he blew his wad early on.
Well, I mean, I kind of get some of the references from this New York City. I think he's kind of bringing into the fold like the Paul Bateson story.
Yeah.
Who was the guy from the Exorcist movie, like the radiology guy who was actually murdered someone, and they think he could have been a serial killer. And there were several serial killers preying on gay men in the city.
Yeah.
During this time.
Definitely.
I mean, so that's kind of an interesting aspect, and we're getting a serial killer and all that with the show, but I don't know. It just always falls short for me. I'm always like, this is going to be cool, and then it never is as cool as I think it's going to be. I don't know.
Anywho.
American Horror Story, blah.
No, so anyway, yeah, like everybody's hooking up, bro.
At the bathhouse?
You just like you're sitting there having a drink, and apparently like someone just comes by and raises their eyebrow. Next thing you know, you're banging in the like alley.
Man, I've never had people hit on me in bars, so I wonder what that's like.
I don't know. If I was called to action
ugly.
In those circumstances, I would never be able to perform. It's too much for me. But I'm sure some people could.
At the bathhouse, Dahmer's victims began reporting the drug encounters, and eventually his membership at the bath club was revoked.
I guess so.
This was around 1987. Word went around about a guy who was slipping people Mickeys. He was effectively blacklisted from other bathhouses like around Milwaukee. So he's banned. He's kicked out.
And I can imagine there's that big of a scene in Milwaukee.
He got 86 and 87. You know what I'm saying?
I can't imagine that after 1, 2, or 3, you're probably basically locked out of the scene at that point. Yeah. Right?
Probably. One night while aimlessly roaming the streets, he saw a male mannequin in a store window. Jeffrey found the mannequin attractive, but was more excited by the fact that the object was inanimate and could not move.
Yeah, it was always about control with him, keeping that thing with him, being able to affect it completely.
Jeffrey smashed the window and spirited away the newfound pleasure implement. That's the only way I could describe it.
I think that's perfect.
Learning other deceptive skills, the mannequin represented a new path forward. Jeffrey said, quote, "I trained myself to view people as objects of pleasure instead of people."
Yeah.
So this mannequin is kind of helping him reinforce this idea.
Oh, so he can almost look at someone like an object.
Yeah.
Not a person.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, I could see the mannequin facilitating that perfectly for him.
When his grandmother found the mannequin, she forced him to throw it away. Not wanting her to tell Lionel, Jeffrey agreed to dispose of it. One morning while having breakfast, Jeffrey read the obituary of a young man who'd passed away. This is when an idea flew into his funnel.
Right in it, huh?
Actually,
Yeah.
I stole that from, there's a Thomas the Train episode my son used to watch, and it would always be like, and an idea flew into Thomas's funnel.
Nice.
Yeah. So I just had to throw that in there. So this idea flies into Jeffrey's funnel. He would rob a grave and get a body.
So see, this is typical. He for whatever strange things that he's in, he's stair stepping into it.
He's like Bob. He's like baby stepping into it.
Baby steps. But he's slowly working himself up, you know? At first, I'm sure with him it was ideas and fantasies. And then he's bringing it into the physical world. And even through the mannequin or through dead animals, he can control that. He can, be the lord over this being. And then the mannequin, he can act out these fantasies, more clearly with an inanimate object that he can, once again, he can control, make sure what happens, control everything. And now he just keeps it going, right?
He's one of those love dolls.
Maybe a $7,000 love doll could have saved a lot of trouble here.
I feel like it might have, or at least kept him occupied for a period, right? So he's going to go rob a grave. That way he could have his way with a human body and not have to kill the person.
See, Dahmer is such a strange character.
So fucking weird, bro.
Such a strange character. He's a monster. I got to be clear. He's a monster. A lot of other people would have been better off if he had died earlier or something. I mean, I'm not sympathetic to Dahmer directly, but almost like sympathetic to his situation.
Dahmer makes me feel very pro-choice.
Yes, but Dahmer, I mean,
his mama should have just yeeted him out.
I'm not pro Dahmer in any way. He's a monster. He killed these people,
God,
all these victims.
Boring piece of shit.
And he is a piece of shit. But it's so strange the way his personality is. And I think it is maybe what you keep saying. He's boring and he's kind of lackadaisical and he's just so he's lame. He's so lame with all this shit.
So lame.
But, we've often wondered amongst ourselves if he had gotten to some kind of a loving, healthy relationship early on in his young life.
Incapable, I think.
That maybe this other stuff wouldn't have happened. But, I mean, that's only can be speculation at this point.
I just think he was incapable of...
I think his personality traits, no matter who he tried to get with, was going to push them away.
Yeah.
Right? For whatever reason, all the hurt he carried from the divorce and his childhood and stuff like that, it's almost like he's built to push people away. And no one's going to stay with him, like him, love him.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that makes him sympathetic, but that kind of makes him, he wasn't very confident. It kind of makes him a strange serial killer in my book, because a lot of times these people are very, very smart, cunning, obviously intelligent, and confident. And I would say Dahmer's
Ted Bundy.
Dahmer's none of those things.
Ted Bundy is such a doober, but he's brimming with confidence.
Yeah.
Right?
And he's fairly smart. I mean, let's be honest. If he had kept from killing people, he very well could have been
Was he though?
Led the Republican Party.
Well,
there's that.
Not saying a whole lot, Dylan.
Well, I'm saying.
Okay.
But no, I'm saying, but Dahmer is just so goofy, and it's almost a surprise that he can strike out with this type of violence. Because if you back in the day met Dahmer, you would be like, that guy's a fucking doober. And he would probably seem very unthreatening. Unassuming. And you would just be like, wow, that guy's, got nothing going on.
What a fucking dork.
But at the same time, if you end up in his apartment, you very well could have been the victim.
On his evening visit to the graveyard, Jeffrey realized how difficult it would be to excavate a body. He was using hand tools, not heavy machinery. But he starts digging and ends up digging through rocky soil, which is exhausting. And soon he realizes, I'm not making any headway with this.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
He thought about breaking into a morgue, but lacked the criminal skills to make that happen successfully, which at least he recognizes that, I'm not smart enough to break into a morgue and pull this off.
Well, I mean, going out to a truly two-spec grave, which is going to be 6 feet deep, whatever.
It's not actually.
It's not?
No.
Well, it's quite deep. To even dig a 2-foot deep hole into the ground is a lot.
Yeah, I know. I'm just telling you it's not actually 6 feet.
What is it then? Is it whatever they get?
Yeah, it could be 2.
It could be 2?
Yeah.
Oh, you're lying to me.
No.
There's people only 2 foot deep in the graveyards?
Yeah.
Is that because of soil circumstances?
Fuck if I know.
Okay.
You just don't technically have to bury somebody 6 feet under.
Oh, okay.
And most graves are not that deep.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Because I don't think I knew that.
Well, now you do. But you're also going to be in a casket in a vault,
Yeah, typically.
you know, covered in dirt.
Yeah, you're not.
Hundreds of pounds of dirt.
I guess in his mind he would just dig a little
So-
bit and flip the lid up, but you're in a sealed casket, sometimes in a vault, which is literal concrete vault, and it's just you're not going to be able to access a body like that.
No, not at all.
More than likely.
So what took him so long to reconcile murder was because he lacked criminal sophistication. Now, initially, he doubted the ability to conceal a murder, though Stephen Hicks had been a success. But those were very specific circumstances. He was living alone. He had this whole house to himself. Mom and dad gone. He didn't have a job, responsibility. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
so
yeah.
he could kind of make this happen. But now he's in a different situation. I mean, he's working. He's living with his grandmother. He's under her watchful eye.
Yeah, and he can't just do what he wants.
In September of 1986, Jeffrey went to the Kinnick River, a place that attracted a lot of vagrants, drug users, and criminals. So he was drunk and just sort of wandering around this river area. Almost sounds like it's some kind of public park or something. He sits down by the river. You know, again, he's completely drunk, and he notices 2 young boys playing several yards away. To get their attention, Jeffrey drops trowel and starts masturbating.
And that will do it. That will make people look at you.
The
I know
boys
that.
ran reporting the incident to authorities. So Jeffrey was charged with lewd and lascivious behaviors, which was a sex crime in Wisconsin. The charge was reduced to drunk and disorderly. He paid a small fine and got a year's probation. So as we've seen, he's exhibiting these very deviant behaviors that are obvious signs of a sexual predator.
Well, yeah, that's going
And he
to...
keeps just getting away with it. So that's the other part of the story that's frustrating, is how the system, the criminal justice system, has failed when it comes to Dahmer, like multiple times.
I think this reinforces the fact, like, the incident at the fair was likely him exposing himself.
Yeah.
Right? Not just him trying to find a place to pee and somebody happened to see his goob or whatever. And these are very deviant behaviors, very dangerous, deviant behaviors. And when people don't have consequences for these, they're only going to get worse. And I think if anyone knows anything about the Dahmer case, we can all point to the system failing on many levels, the various victims of Dahmer in these circumstances.
Well, and I think it also speaks volumes about how our justice system is set up, that when you have these adults, these men, I mean, maybe women, I don't know how many women expose themselves in public.
It seems atypical for women.
But you get these men who expose themselves in public to women, to children, and they'll get a slap on the wrist. And the charges will get reduced to something else, and then they're not on a registry, but then their behavior is escalating from there on. So it just seems to me that this is like a huge red flag that should be taken way more seriously, because this person is going to likely commit some other like devious sex crime on down the road. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I agree completely. I think there should be a certain category of charges that shouldn't ever be dropped unless under very specific circumstances. Peeping Toms, exposing yourself to the public. These are all very any type of stalking. These are all very deviant behaviors that oftentimes lead to more violent actions and you know, even to murder. And these are all in in my experience, in a very specific category of what we classify here at Mountain Murders as rather deviant behaviors.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in the months after this arrest, Jeffrey tries to be a good boy. He goes to church with his grandmother. He tries to do extra chores around the house. He told his family he was merely urinating and the whole thing had been blown out of proportion once
Right.
again. On September 15th of 1987, Jeffrey Dahmer meets Steve Tuomi at a Milwaukee gay bar called Club 219. They had several drinks together when Dahmer invited Steve to continue partying with him in a motel room. The guy agrees.
I just want to take some photos.
They rent a room at the Ambassador Hotel near Marquette University. Now, the Ambassador was also considered kind of, a nicer place, kind of high end. So I'm sure that was, to Steve, maybe a sign that like, oh, okay, this guy's taking me someplace nice. He's probably got a little money, made him feel a little bit more comfortable.
Well, yeah, I think
He's
that'd
not
be.
taking him to some shitty roadside motel that rents a room by the hour.
I think that'd be natural for anyone. If you went to some place that paid by the hour, that's gross and full of, drug addicts and
And
prostitutes and dope dealers, that would make you nervous before you even got in the room. But if you went to some place that's a little nicer, cleaner, you might even be like, wow, this is kind of nice.
Yeah.
That would definitely kind of disarm you.
Steve Tuomi was 24 years old. He grew up in Ontonagon, which is in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. He was considered artistic and friendly. He was working as a short order cook in Milwaukee at this time. But Dahmer got drunk before he could drug Tuomi. His plan was to drug the young man and have sex with him. But the next morning, Dahmer awakened to find Steve dead. His chest was crushed and he was bleeding from the mouth. Apparently, while in a drunken state, Dahmer had attacked the man, beating and strangling him. Jeffrey was much panicked about getting caught, but not so much about the murder.
Okay, that makes sense.
He was freaking out, wanting to know, how could he get this body out of the hotel? He put the Do Not Disturb sign on the door, went out and bought a suitcase. The suitcase was large enough to hold the body without dismemberment. Because he didn't own a car, Jeffrey had to call a taxi. The driver even helped him load this luggage into the trunk of the taxi.
Nice.
When he arrives at Catherine's house, because he takes this body to his grandmother, she was asleep. So Dahmer was able to sneak into the basement. He took Tuomi to the secluded basement where he got to work. Seeing the dead man's body sprawled on the floor, Jeffrey lost control. He had sex with a corpse, then masturbated on him.
Now, I would classify that as losing control.
He said he then spent time lying next to the body.
See, he always just wanted. Now he has this person, this form, this being that can't leave him.
And he just wants to
he has control.
Snuggle with this body. I mean, it's very strange.
It is very strange. I don't even know everything that's going on with Jeffrey to cause some of the stuff he did. I mean, some of it just is. I mean, he's got so many things mixed together. It's very strange.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just like, what the hell? So Dahmer experienced animal dissections, went to work removing the flesh and muscles from the bones. He loaded the parts into garbage bags. Jeffrey took the bones, smashing them repeatedly until they turned into powder. The bone powder was flushed down the toilet. The process took several hours. After cleaning up the basement, it was as if nothing had happened. But Dahmer had saved the head and genitals.
Okay.
He bleached the head and placed it in a box for masturbation purposes.
All right. That's not weird at all.
His words.
Okay. So he just wanted to keep these things, these pieces that he could still get sexual gratification from.
Yes.
Okay.
The head was kept in the bedroom closet in this wooden box. He said, quote, I had a box in my bedroom closet, and it contained the mummified head and genitals of a young man I met in one of those bars in downtown Milwaukee. Steve Tuomi wasn't reported missing for 3 months, and when his father finally told Milwaukee police about his son's disappearance, they told him there wasn't much they could do because there were no signs of foul play. Again, it's one of those, oh, well, he probably just skipped town.
Yeah.
But his family pointed to the fact that the young man left behind clothing and multiple paychecks.
Well, yeah, it's a good sign. People don't typically skip out when they have money they can get.
And clothes.
And their clothes and their
furniture and all the
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to take your items, your personal effects.
Especially your paychecks.
Yeah, if you're leaving, you need the money, bro.
Concerned with Jeff's alcoholism and the arrests, Lionel decided to search his son's room. He found the 1-foot square metal and wood box in Jeffrey's closet. Lionel thought this was where Jeffrey stashed pornographic materials, and he didn't want his mother to see it, Catherine. Jeffrey at first refused to unlock the box, citing privacy, and he went to his room. Jeffrey removed the head from the box and placed porn magazines inside. Then he took the box downstairs to show his father, and the magazines were mostly straight material, as Jeffrey was still concerned about his family finding out that he was gay.
Okay.
I mean, talk about cutting it close.
Man, maybe you should just tell everyone how you feel and the life you want to live instead of hiding everything. Maybe you wouldn't be so damn confused about yourself.
After the second murder, Jeffrey's compulsion to kill was uncontrollable. By 1988, Jeffrey went into full serial killer berserker mode. His plan of luring young men from the gay bars back to his grandma's house was actually pretty easy. The basement was never used by anyone, so he had full privacy to indulge in his most sinister fantasies and activities. It was January when Dahmer was going to Club 219 that he spotted a 14-year-old named James Doxtator hustling on the corner. Dahmer offered to pay the boy if he would return to Jeffrey's house, drink, and allow Jeffrey to take those pictures.
Just want to take some photos. Just relax.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Jeffrey took Doxtator into his room where they got drunk and had sex. Doxtator's drink, of course, was plied with sleeping pills. After he passed out, Dahmer strangled the boy to death, then proceeded to have sex with his corpse. He dragged the body down to the basement where he planned to dismember it exactly as he had done with Steve Tuomi. 2 days before he met Dahmer, Jamie, as he was known by friends and family, had run away from home to escape an abusive stepfather. This is just so sad. The Native American teenager had a scar on his upper body, and Dahmer would later recall it when confessing to the murder. Jamie's mother said her son had been hyperactive, always getting into trouble at school, and was misunderstood. She said, but, quote, he had a lot of love. I loved him. Her name was Debbie Vega, and she told that to the Associated Press News. And that is where we will end part 1. Next week, I'm going to bring you part 2 of the Jeffrey Dahmer story.
Wow. I my hat's off to you, Heather, for putting all that in one episode. And again, there was some, even as much as I've been back over Dahmer lately, for lack of a better word, you had some little tidbits I'd never heard before, and I appreciate that. But I can't wait till to bring this to fruition. Right?
You're looking forward to part 2?
I'm waiting to finish on Dahmer.
Does
that make sense?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. See, the joke's on him because the drugs and stuff wouldn't work on me, bro. Right? And I'm a fairly stout lad. So here's what would have happened. I would have whooped Jeffrey's ass.
So you're saying you're going to make like a Tarantino style like revenge film
Yeah.
against Dahmer?
Yeah, Dahmer tries to
But
get
it's
out.
like Dylan versus Dahmer?
Yeah. Yeah, Dahmer tries to get out on my ass, right? But what he don't know is I like be like eating mushrooms and stuff and smoking weed and drinking and stuff. Like, I'm not gonna pass out, bro. I'm just like, wow, are we just getting started having fun? You know, he's gonna keep looking at me, waiting for me to fall out. He gonna fuck around, fall out, right? And then I'm gonna like rob his ass, take all the money out of his wallet, and
Are
leave.
you like DMX?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm taking out the trash like it's a Tuesday.
Damn, that's grimy.
Yeah, I am grimy. So, and then he'd be like, wait a minute. I was wanting to kill your fat ass. And I want to eat you. And I'd be like, no, hell no.
He wouldn't eat. You'd be too. No, you too gristly.
It ain't no grizzle girl.
That's like soupy fat.
No, but you could render all this down to some proper meat. You just got to cook me for a long time. But check this out. I would have
That's like
whooped his
gooey
ass.
fat. Nobody wants to eat
And
that.
I would have saved some people's lives because I'm not trying to play that shit. And I'm not going to pass out, Dahmer. So that's how that would have worked.
All right. Well, I'm going to write the script for this Dylan versus Dahmer revenge story.
Once upon a time
Maybe
in Milwaukee.
it should be animated.
It should be animated. That would work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Heather. I really enjoyed this.
Well, we'll have part 2 for you next week, and stick around because we will be bringing you a midweek.
We are
We
gonna.
promise.
Well, it's gonna happen.
We will have a midweek coming up. And of course, Thanksgiving just around the corner. So we hope you have a festive holiday, however you spend that.
Yes. We hope you either get to be with your loved ones or you can
Avoid them.
properly
because if
avoid
they maybe
your
drive
loved
you crazy
ones.
and you hate
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
That's right.
You just want to stay home and eat a chili dog and be a slob all day. Do it.
Yeah. So
Live your best
everyone,
life.
everyone, be safe out there.
Yes. And if you have any thoughts, feelings, feedback, whatever, you can always email us, mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget about our Patreon, which is patreon.com/mountainmurderspodcast, where you can get ad-free episodes, bonus content,
And stuff.
and stuff. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Dylan. Gobble, gobble, bitch.
Gobble, gobble.